Let's give them a hand as they come on up. Come on up, guys. Don't be shy, they won't bite, I promise. So as they take their seats, just as a reminder for everyone watching in the audience, the main reason we do these is obviously to get to know indie filmmakers, but two, to hopefully inspire and educate you to maybe create your own projects by hearing people who've been there, done it, and survived. So first, let's have you guys introduce yourself. So,
my name's Chris Pincala.
What did you do, Chris?
I play Leopold, co-wrote it and produced.
Cool.
Very nice, thank you. Drake Shannon also co-wrote and acted in it. Did you act in there? Yeah, you're in there.
I'm Matt Hughes. I was the director and cinematographer.
Matt Helderman, and I produced it.
Let's give him another hand, yeah. So as we all know, it takes a tribe, an army, whatever analogy you want to use to make a film. So anybody cast or crew in the audience you want to give a shout out and recognition?
I thought I did see David. Is that you?
Yep.
David. So he plays Ern in the film. He acts. And then I know Jeremy was in the audience. Yes. Was our first AD.
And Tom Funk, our first AC.
Nice.
Awesome. And right Christine Park, our editor.
Oh. Awesome. So, yeah.
That's good. We good? Awesome. Well, welcome to them as well. So it always starts with story and script. You can't really make a movie without that. So you guys want to kind of maybe start with story. How did that kind of come to be? Maybe how do you guys know each other? And then go into the script.
Well, I guess I know Drake coming on about 10 years. We met in acting class here in LA. Somewhere off Sunset and Poinsettia. I don't think the place is still open.
Very specific, Chris. Thank you.
Just trying to see how much time we have here. Anyways, I started writing this thing. It was just sort of just an idea coming from being a film fan, a film buff, and being familiar with the I guess madhouse genre. And One Flew Over, and I kind of started with that, and and kind of organically came up with this story along with Drake when he came on the project, and yeah.
Talk a little bit about you guys' writing. Did you guys write separately? Did you guys at night together just crank out some pages? Kind of what was your guys' process writing together?
I would just say it went through a lot of iterations. Chris and I, we took a trip to the desert in Palm Springs, locked the house, and then just wrote as much as we could, and and did nothing else but write. And then we sent to some people that we respect, and got some notes, and then rewrote it, and rewrote it, and rewrote it, and It was never right, and it was always wrong, and it was this incredible puzzle. I mean, there were so many elements. I mean, I really enjoy writing, and from doing this project, I was able to do a lot of it. So,
right. We did a lot of writing. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of rewriting, and I guess if this like what you're saying, if there's something to take away from that process, if I'm doing another film, I think I would sort of kind of hold steadfast to all those original ideas you had at the beginning that maybe you were married to. Marry yourself to some of them. Don't change. Don't change them.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely things that are going to change regardless. But yeah. So if there's a few things to hold on to, do your best to.
So
absolutely.
make it work.
I mean, it was a truly independent film. So Chris and I were out there in Texas casting the movie, whilst rewriting the film 2 days before we start.
Location scouting and different, but everybody else is doing the same thing, wearing multiple hats, and so that's just sort of part of the course.
Did you guys write with location in mind, and did you guys from there? Did you knew this is where you're headed? Talk a little bit about that.
I'm from Houston, Texas. I guess 2 hours south of where we shot just around Austin, Texas, and I went to college in Austin and was familiar with the landscape. And when I was writing this, I had all these sort of landscapes in mind, and Akis did an amazing job of translating that from the script to the screen. I don't know if we could have gotten somebody better for the job. But it's funny, yeah, we wrote this with this Texas landscape in mind, and this hill country, the spring scene, all that stuff, and we went away from it for a long time, thinking, okay, maybe we'll shoot outside of LA, Bakersfield, or blah, 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 somewhere else. And eventually we came back to it, so, yeah.
It's a kind of good transition. Keith, how did you get involved? How do you guys know each other? Kind of talk about that transition as you're getting into like script that you're willing to bring other people on board, and talk kind of a little bit about that.
Well, basically, I met Matthew Helderman early on in the process of kind of taking the script around. And he responded really well to it. And he had worked with Akis multiple times. And when we met about cinematography, and it kind of eventually spawned into him directing it. So, yeah.
So maybe start with Matthew and then Akis. How did you guys find each other, and then what made you go like, okay, for your production company, this was a film you guys wanted to make?
Yeah, so we met Chris through a mutual colleague who we had done some work with, Juddy, right, I believe? Mutual colleague, another Texas guy, I think.
Yeah.
And we had actually approached another director, and like Chris was referencing, Akis was originally going to come on just to DP the film. The original director had some family issues arise very close to principal photography, I mean, within 3-4 weeks. And Akis had done some early prep work, but at that point he was still just DPing, and we pretty much made the decision within 48 hours, let's just bring Akis in to DP and to direct this thing. And we loved it sort of from the early days of thinking about it like a Terrence Malick type movie meets One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest visually. We knew it was going to be super, super challenging, and obviously a lot of us up here can attest to just how hard of a movie it was. But having Akis, it was sort of the first full-on directorial project for Akis, as well as DPing it, and he killed it. I mean, he crushed it. We've only heard great things about it. And it was super ambitious, 18 days of principal photography, obviously out in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and very, very challenging, but certainly promising.
So I want to hear all that from your point of view, Keith, because I heard 48-hour turnaround to become a director, and I just totally kind of like lost my mind in that thought process. So you tell us your point of view of that process.
Sure. I mean, I was, I probably read the script beginning of August for the first time, and I was reading it, first I always read the script just to see what's happening. No visuals in mind or nothing else. And I met with Drake and Chris, and we discussed the visual aspect of the movie. So I started wrapping my brain around how to shoot the movie from a DP standpoint, and then certain things happened. And 2 weeks later, I was directing and DPing the movie. So I started rereading the script. I was like, I better learn what's happening in this thing. So it was very quick. It was at that point it was mid-August, and we left Los Angeles 2 weeks later to go to Texas. We were looking at locations over the internet to see what we can find. And once we got there, we had about a week of location scouting and prepping. So it was pretty tough to put any shot list together in advance without knowing the locations, or how we can get to those locations, because some of those locations were pretty difficult to get to. Logistically, and get equipment or trucks or cameras or anything out there. So it was very quick. It was not a lot of sleep and a lot of location scouting and talking and meetings. And every morning I would wake up a couple hours earlier before call time with my camera operator and make a shot list, basically. There were references, of course, and there was a goal in mind of what we want it to look like, but the specifics of it, of how many shots we have to do and what the blocking is going to be like, was pretty much determined at the beginning of each day.
Day at a time.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit about this, Drake. Let's talk a little bit more about the casting process, because you guys shot in Texas. In writing, being actors, did you have other actors in mind, or were you just like, we're going to just write and then take care from there? So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, I mean, we knew some actors from LA that we brought, and they were happy to be there. I was happy to have them. And then we did a lot of local casting in Texas, in a very small town, and went through different stages of that. Chris would take time to cast maybe like a day or so, then I would take the next day, and he would write, and I would then cast, and then we'd send the tapes to Akis, and then Akis would say, yeah, let's see about the other guy, you know? And so that's kind of how it went, I suppose.
How was that process with that local casting? Because it's a smaller market, obviously. There's not as many choices. Do you feel like were you having changing things on the script, or do you feel like everyone came through that worked out?
I mean, I feel like we just really lucked out. There was a lot of really awesome actors in the Austin area. Yeah. They would come and, you know, they'd be totally in character. It was just like, yeah, it was just like, you know, being here in LA, I'm sure, if not better. So, yeah, I mean, it was easy. It was easy to just sort of sit back, and had great actors come in and read. But Austin's just a sort of a hotbed for.
So Austin was your go-to place for your actors.
Yeah,
great.
Absolutely.
What was the process? One, Akis, from your point of view, because I'm just like still blown away the 48-hour thing, but it's the idea of like you have another hat you have to put on, and so you're seeing about these actors, and then two, for you guys being on the other side, you're used to auditioning and used to doing things, and now you have to be the people that make those decisions. So talk a little bit about vision in the sense of the casting for you, and then talk about your guys as kind of on the other side of the table. So Akis, maybe start with you.
Yeah, I mean, once I got on board as a director, certain actors had already been cast. I had to, look at certain tapes, and still had to make some decisions. But being new at that thing, I was, I kind of wanted to discuss those things with Drake and Chris and Matt, and just kind of talk things through. Scotty Thompson, who was playing Karina, she was a friend of mine from undergrad, actually, and she immediately came to mind that she'd be perfect for it, and it worked out really nicely. Yeah.
How about for you guys? What being on the other side of the table? Anything you learned, or the process? You're like, oh, now we're here. This is kind of came into light.
It's so funny. I think the whole time we're writing it, even before we had shoot dates or any money or anything at all, it was like typical actor. He would get all of his friends in the movie already. So all my friends were already cast. I'm cast. I mean, everybody, all my friends are cast. But it's so funny when you get close to the actual shooting and hiring people. It's funny, your friends are sort of, oh, I'm doing something else, or I can't do it. And it's like, really? We have this feature film?
They were all in other movies. Yeah. Everybody just got like a
Or I'm doing
film.
this short film out in like Wisconsin, and it's like, I don't know if you guys have something really going on there, but it's so funny just how that worked out. And I got to work with my best friend, so that was cool. But yeah, just I don't know. Working in casting is not. I mean, I tip my hat to those guys. I mean, that's not an easy job. But
not at all. I mean, I was amazed about how much stamina it takes to take in every actor when they come into the door, and you have to be present for them. I mean, that's respect, and it's a lot of energy. Casting, seeing another actor, and you go through 100 of them, and I was like, this is really intense. I gotta step out. Maybe I'm not grab a smoke or something.
yeah, I guess coming from the acting, auditioning a lot, sometimes you can see casting directors out of the corner of your eye, sort of checking out on you. So yeah, I see it. you have to have energy in there and sort of be present for that actor, and it's like to really pay attention to about 30 actors is kind of tough. So yeah.
We're going to transition a little bit into production. I want to one question I had you for Matthew. Newer filmmakers. So what makes you say yes to some people that are writing a script that are actors, like, you know what I mean, that we're going to say yes to this and put some money behind it and help you and make it work? What needs to be there for a production company to say yes, we're going to take this on and help?
I think at that point we had probably made 4 or 5 features with Akis, with him as the DP.
Yeah.
And so transitioning to Akis directing, we sort of knew both the wonderful things that were going to come out of it as well as the things that were going to make me lose my hair at an even further accelerated rate. So we knew going into it really what to expect. And again, we love Akis. Whenever we put films together, we want him involved in one way or another. So whether it's $1 million film, a $5 million film, whatever the case may be, it always seems like it makes sense. The creative is really in sync. The workflow, how he works with his team, his ability to handle what he needs to so that we can handle our day-to-day. To me, it always makes that a lot easier. And I think, like, for instance, we have a film that's shooting right now, and one of my other partners who produced this film with me as well isn't here because the DP and the director we're working with are folks we haven't worked with before. And it's another similar situation where it's an out-of-town shoot, newer filmmakers, single financier who came in and put all the capital in, and it's a nightmare. It's 20 trucks driving from LA when it should be 3. It's 70 hotel rooms when it should be 30. And having someone you've worked with who can sort of say yes and no when they need to help sort of save your skin or your hair, in my instance, is probably the most important thing. I think there's certainly a balancing act to be had between the financing, the creative, and the logistics. This film, we certainly fell off the balancing act sort of several times, but Akis and obviously Chris and Drake were really realistic about it. And I think that's probably the biggest piece, is working with filmmakers and creatives that they don't necessarily have to get what you do as a producer or as a financier, but they have to be willing to understand when you say no, you're not just saying it out of the joy of doing so. There's a real reason behind it.
Great. You mentioned it. We'll recap a little bit too. Production days. It sounds like put in here. You guys saw the questions, rehearsals. It sounds like that probably didn't happen with that kind of shift of manpower. But talk about a little bit about production days. Maybe a little more specific about what locations you shot. Talk about like finding a little bit that kind of journey for you guys.
All right, so yeah, rehearsals 0, none, really. I'd highly recommend rehearsing. But, it's funny. I mean, Ray came in, Ray Wise, and for him, I don't know if I'd recommend it. I mean, he's such a heavyweight and a professional that some people you don't even really need to. But I think when you're trying to tell a story, no matter what, no matter who the actors are, for sure, get some rehearsal time in. With an indie film like this, it just wasn't possible. We had people kind of flying in, and we had a story to tell, and we were going to do it no matter what. But as far as locations, I know we didn't have some until we were already into shooting, so that I know posed a challenge. But
Talk a little bit about that. Was it like a referral of a referral? Since it was a location that you guys weren't familiar with.
Yeah.
The house?
Well,
Yeah. How did we find that house, Chris?
We found the house online.
Online.
Yeah, it was. We went to I think it was the Texas Film Commission, and we looked at a few. We started looking at asylums first, like closed down hospitals or asylums. And
where you sent Drake and Chris to these abandoned buildings.
That's right.
Check out the basement.
You guys went to a place where Terrence Malick had shot a movie, right?
Yeah, that's true. Right.
And it was, what was it like
Yeah.
inside?
It was just really scary.
There was like claw marks on the door, and it said, "Get out."
Something like that.
And I said, "Chris, let's not film here."
Yeah, that's funny. When we found this other place, Drake and I drove up to this Milton Way, this place, and we knock on the door, nobody's there, and we're like, all right, well, maybe we'll go around back and see if there's, you know, a back door, if somebody's back there. And we saw that nobody's back there, but the garage door was just a little, like, kind of creaked open. And we could hear a TV playing inside. And we go, that's interesting. Maybe somebody's in there. So, you know, and we're like, you know, 11th hour. We're trying to get this location locked. And so, you know, I crawl under there. And in Texas, you got to watch out because, you know, people, you know, come out with their guns. But when later we found out, you know, I didn't have to, you know, come up to, you know, I didn't have to face up to any guns then. But we found out she had a shotgun. Apparently we had the equipment truck there overnight. There were some burglars that tried to break into the equipment truck, and she came out with a shotgun and scared them away. This is serious stuff.
Free security.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Great. Can you guys are kind of talking about this, but that, and for everyone, because from your kind of lens and point of view, what's the behind the scenes stuff that you want us to know since we've seen the final product? Like, you saw this scene, but here's the story to how that scene happened, or...
I wiggled the wheat. Akis had me wiggling the wheat to get the shot. That was the best part. He's like, Drake, you're going way too fast on the wiggle. Slow it down. We got the shot.
We got the shot. An interesting story is probably like when you guys are crossing the river.
That wasn't a river, right?
And I think it was probably polluted, pretty dirty and smelly, right?
Oh yeah.
And it was probably about 3 a.m. at night at that point when we were filming that scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pretty tough.
Yeah. And I think you guys had to wrap your legs or something like that to get...
Yeah.
We wrapped each other in saran wrap. It wasn't a river. Right. So that will tell you what it was. But yeah, luckily no one got any viruses or anything, so we're all healthy.
Indie filmmaking, I guess. Yeah.
Sacrifice for your art.
We also had the, the water truck show up with no water for those scenes with the rain, and then somehow we got water within about 30 minutes.
Yeah, they delivered I don't know, Jeremy Phoenix will remember. We ordered this water truck out in the middle of nowhere, and when I say the middle of nowhere, I mean Taylor, Texas, Hutto, these small towns where the population's a few thousand people. We were lucky to find a place that could deliver a water truck with a hose that could create a rain scene, similar to putting like a rain bar for LA or New York or wherever you're shooting. It's made for production. So this huge truck shows up, they drop it off, it gets dropped off at the end of this long driveway because we were shooting something outside that day. First off, you needed sort of a Class A license to be able to drive it because it had stick shift and it was really difficult to drive, and I certainly don't have that. And a lot of us were trying to say, okay, how are we going to get this truck, number one, into the driveway to actually spray water out of this thing? We find someone who can start driving it into the driveway, and they realize, well, this actually feels really light. The truck, as we're stopping, feels really light. Let's see how much water they put in this thing, and there's zero water. It's completely dry. And we had to shoot with water later that day. And so the resourcefulness I think you get from making movies with no money makes you so much better at making movies when you have money. So I called the local, I think the police department and the fire department, and said, look, I need to fill this up. Where can I? And there just happened to be some sort of like public parks faucet that was like a 5-gallon, huge faucet. Filled it up in an hour, and it was like $10 to fill it up. It was just tremendously serendipitous. But yeah, when this truck showed up with no water in it.
There was also some other the scenes at the spring where I think it was just Drake, the B-roll days, and remember that guy with his motorized boat kind of like totally saved us. So some of those shots I guess we couldn't have.
Yeah, we're trying to get some shots close to the water as opposed to filming them from the shore, and we needed a boat, but we didn't have time to make arrangements, or we didn't know who to contact out there in the middle of nowhere, but we're lucky enough to find a guy with a boat over there, and I think, we gave him a 6-pack or something? Yeah.
Helderman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how we got those shots.
It sounded like not shooting in LA or New York. There, people are more open to say yes or give you a
Yeah, I
hand.
mean,
or,
a great way to look at it is when you shoot in LA, you're looking at $4,000 to $6,000 a day for a location, especially if you're taking a whole home like that. That house cost us $4,000 for the whole shoot, for full 10, 15 days. And that pretty much goes across the board when you're not shooting in these areas that are used to production.
Let's talk a little bit about post-production, because I feel like that is the most mysterious thing for new filmmakers, is just that whole process. So I always set it up with, did you guys feel you set yourself up for post-production or didn't set yourself up for post-production, and how so either way?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had the footage we needed. I think, like most of the film, we were under budgeted. So that's always a challenge. How do you sort of pull teeth to get things done and call in as many favors as you can? And it's often difficult to pull in favors from people who don't necessarily feel like they have a big vested stake in a movie. So you need to really try and get people involved in as much of a vested interest perspective as you possibly can. I think editorially, Akis had worked with Christine in the past, and she did a great job. Everyone was super happy with the cut. From a music standpoint, Akis again had worked with Alexis, who came on to compose. It was just phenomenal. From a coloring standpoint, it was excellent. I mean, it was definitely a belaboring process, because all of us moved on to shooting other films very quickly right after that, and so it's short, really hyphenated type time periods versus having a very specific schedule like you will in a $5-10 million movie for post. So as it sort of dragged on, there were certainly days where it felt like people were working on it when they had the time to do so, because obviously money wasn't going to be the driving incentive. But the team that we had assembled, we were able to pull it off pretty nicely and deliver the movie.
Did you, with your editor, were they doing some stuff while you were shooting in case they wanted to say
No.
this, or was it all after?
No, it was all after. I mean, we were again in Texas, and we didn't have the manpower, the infrastructure to get footage, uploaded online and get here and cut, the same day. We just didn't have that kind of luxury. So the movie wrapped, and we brought everything back, and then it was transcoded. It wasn't even transcoded during filming, so it definitely took a while. And we just did everything step by step. We just said, let's not rush to get this done, and whenever it gets done, it gets done. Let's just get it done as well as we can, given what we have. Yeah. And it was just about gathering a great group of people that I've worked with before in the past, or I know them and feel comfortable with them, and music and color and editing, sound too.
So it sounds like you guys, the patience was a key factor, and just like we're gonna keep working until it gets done. So then once was it done? Was that kind of, I don't want to say once it was done, but the later stages of that, was that when like, okay, what's the next life for this? Whereas the film festival thing versus, okay, we have a deadline for X film festival and working back from this way. It sounds like you guys kind of just like, we're just gonna be patient, and when it's done, it's done.
I mean, we certainly had deadlines, and we were willing to submit work in progress cuts of the film.
Yeah.
Both the executive producers as well as the team in general had all submitted to bigger festivals, mid-level festivals in the past, and so we had places we wanted to screen in mind. But I think Akis is very much a perfectionist in what he wants, and so it wasn't like, okay, we have to be done with post in 2 months. That's it. It was, we're going to make this right. Akis is going to work on it when he has time. The greater team's going to work on it when they have time, etc. And in the meantime, we'll submit working cuts.
Great. And then, did you guys kind of talk about that? Because a lot of times, new filmmakers want to hit the big ones and go for the top versus being maybe more selective and like, okay, where does our movie fit in the genre of film festivals and what they think? So kind of talk a little bit about having a perspective of film festivals as a whole.
Yeah, I can touch on it quickly. I mean, with this film, to us, it was very clearly an art house film. We've had things at Sundance and Toronto and Screen and Con, wherever. This film definitely had a great little life of its own, and for the money that it was shot for, cents over dollars, it's one of the better films that I feel like a lot of us have probably been involved in terms of the final product versus the fact that it was well under $500,000. We were realistic. I mean, you always want to be ambitious. I think relationships will ultimately dictate the larger festivals for smaller films. And ultimately those relationships have so many horses they can put in each race each year. So this film has had a nice festival run, sort of at mid-level festivals, and we had a nice sale out of HBO, out of Europe, and out of Australia. But it's, obviously the festival game is a really crowded space. So we were realistic but ambitious, and we networked as much as we could with the folks we knew to find it a home in the festival circuit.
What was your guys' experience once the audience saw the films and you guys got feedback? Was it, what was kind of things that surprised you or things that confirmed what you guys were working on or hoping for? Kind of what's that experience like for you guys?
First, being accepted into Sun Valley Film Festival, an up-and-coming festival, was a great honor, and then winning the audience award. And then, after the first night of screening, having people everybody, the first night of a festival, usually there's a party and people get together, the filmmakers, and we'll talk. And I remember a lot of people coming up to me and saying, like, hey, man, that was great, or, this really, what I mean, just, I really love this part, or you guys killed it doing this. And that was really cool. Just that whole experience with Sun Valley, and I think that's going to be a definite festival to watch in the coming years. Yeah. And the thing is, with that festival, they had movies with like, Fassbender and Slow West, and so we were kind of up against a lot of really cool movies, and to get an honor from that festival was really cool.
Is there anything as filmmakers that you learned about the process in the sense of like, okay, this is storytelling and then how audience receives story? Is there anything you felt like you're like, oh, this is something that, or not? If not, that's okay.
Yeah, so every audience is different, and so I would just say that it was really, I guess, interesting to see that there was a well response towards the film, that people actually, consistently. Yeah, I mean, having some ladies come up to me afterwards in Sun Valley and just were like, they had tears, and I was like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, and I gave them a hug. And so there was a nice little moment there. So for me, that was a learning process, and I'm sure you guys can attest to that as well. So.
Well, the idea of just like confirming, like all the hard work came into like, okay, these people are having emotional resonance with a
those
product.
single tears. All of the hard work was for that.
Yes, of course.
And but yeah, no, I mean, it was really cool, and just to see different audiences and take the film around, and kind of just touring with this entity, which it is now, and now seeing it much later, I actually enjoy the film more. I mean, right afterwards, I'm going, no, and now I'm just like, yes, it's really cool. I'm glad I didn't have any power.
Get some distance. We'd like to wrap up the golden nugget questions with just, now that you've gone through the process, for someone who maybe is starting, whether it's a short or feature, what would be something you would recommend, encourage them to keep in mind, one thing they can take away from? So we'll talk as writers, director, producer, one thing you would want them to remember about the process as they start their journey. So we'll start, we'll go with Matthew, and we'll work our way down. So.
Yeah, no, I think what we've seen, so we've done a heck of a lot of movies over the years across budget ranges, and sort of the best quote that, to me, it's not even from a filmmaker, it's from a great business leader, Jack Ma, who runs Alibaba, took it public for several $billion. It's the Chinese version of Amazon. They asked him sort of what's the secret to Alibaba's success, and he said, our strongest weapon was that we had no money, no plan, and we didn't know what we were doing. And if we had known those things and we tried to pre-plan it and tried to sort of predestine our destiny, it would never have worked out as well as Alibaba worked out. And I feel like with film, especially when you're starting out, there's no reason I see so many filmmakers want $10 million budgets for their first feature or ridiculous craziness. And there's another great Robert Rodriguez quote recently from the director's chair where he said, look, before this was an industry, when it was just the art form, all it was a person with a camera. And then it became an industry and there needed to be 50 jobs on a set. But ultimately the art form boils down to a camera and a story being told that's captured through it. And so I think not believing you can plan everything, because nothing will ever go the way you want it to, and also being resourceful and being able to be adaptive on your feet, it's probably the biggest piece for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a very broad question to answer because it depends on what you want to do with, you know, the movie, right? If you're a director, if you're a producer, if you're a cinematographer, an editor. But I guess a big thing is just keeping in mind what your resources are and taking advantage of those resources that you have and not try to be too ambitious in terms of what you're trying. I mean, being ambitious is good, but not, you know, to a point where you can succeed in what you're trying to, what the script is. And, you know, the most important thing is always the emotional aspect of the story. It's not about the equipment, it's not about what the lenses are, it's about being able to get the audience to connect to the characters and the emotional aspect. And you can have for that 100,000, you can have 10 million, and you do a better job with 100,000 than 100 million. So just really knowing the purpose of each scene and what that scene says in the context of the whole movie, and the progression from scene to scene, what each scene says, and is it necessary to have that scene, or how can we make it better in the context of the whole movie, I guess.
Great, thank you. Gentlemen?
Yeah, so if you ever have to wiggle wheat. No, I would just say, you know, as far as, you know, looking at this as, you know, there are some different moments of tragedy and comedy, but I would always say just play for keeps, you know, always, you know, try to find that honesty somewhere in the script. You know, with this particular script, patients are being removed from hospitals and sent to prisons, and they're EOPs, and that's pretty tough on them. And so, you know, it highlights some things that are going on in different states, and you know, and just kind of, yeah, do the best you can with what you have, and if you believe in your story, just really do whatever you can to tell it in the best way you can, and don't take no for an answer. Just keep knocking on doors, keep pounding pavement. I mean,
True love is blind.
All right.
Sorry. Sorry.
You cutting me off there?
Sorry, no.
I'm going to let it happen.
Continue. I
That's
had to at least
energy
do
right
one
there. That's
once.
you got
I'd
it.
at least continue if you had anything else. No? Okay.
No.
What I would echo Matthew with what he said is, like, you know, I guess with writing this and you know, for a while it was so much, I was so naive thinking, all right, yeah, I'm just going to make this movie, we're going to go make it, you know. And thinking back to, you know, knowing the process, I can't even get there now. Just kind of knowing, I can't even begin to write the script, knowing, you know, okay, there's so many places where I'm stopping myself from. But the whole thing would be just to go for it and do it, have sort of that childlike enthusiasm, you know, because and at the end of the day, it's sort of also what Akis says. It's, you know, it all comes down to execution. You could have $10 or $10 million, and the $10 script or whatever movie can turn out better because there was communication on set, you know, whatever happened, but the execution was right. And I think it all comes down to that, no matter, you know, whatever project it is. So, yeah.
I think that's a great place to end. Let's give him a hand and say thank you once again.